My name is Amy. I'm a second year in the college studying economics and political science. I think the main thing that I took out of today's COP is this idea of synergy. So I started the morning by attending this panel hosted by a lot of people from the Polish embassy. And what they talked about was the fact that, reaching net zero for Poland by 2050 would require $450 billion worth of investments. And at first that seems like a really big number. It's something that's sort of unachievable. But then they added and elaborated on this idea by saying that, wait, the same policies that help us achieve net zero are the same things that help target demographic issues in Poland. That means that combining all of these issues, the actual required investments solely for climate will only be somewhere around $4 billion. And so that's a significant improvement and means that, all of these climate policies that we've been talking about at COP have sort of ripple effects on the remaining of the economy that make them much more achievable and have much more significant consequences for the rest of the population. And I sort of elaborated on this idea this afternoon just during a random organic chat that I had with this Californian agent who was just talking to me on the bus ride home from COP. So he started talking to me about his work at the California Department of Urban Policy and talking about how all of these the revenue that they get from trading carbon credits are things that they can use to then fund affordable housing and get these more positive social benefits for the people of California. So once again, you see sort of climate initiatives having positive outcomes on the remainder of society in different ways. I came into this conference with a curiosity about how financing can be specifically used to drive climate action into the future. And I think this conference clarified it on two fronts. On the first front, you see sort of the way that it's very much the responsibility of the government to pass policies that are going to make climate financing seem more attractive to private sectors. For example, I attended a panel on bioeconomy and talked to the New Zealand ambassador who talked about how New Zealand most recently passed a lot of legislation relating to antitrust that it's going to allow for more transparency and more sorts of cross-border exchange in terms of IP related to bioeconomic products. And then on the other hand, you see at the same time as this sort of government regulation, you need basically all hands on deck in the private sector in terms of financing for the green economy. And you see the examples of this already happening in real life with, for example, Poland being a country that has very successfully implemented these sorts of policies. And you can see in the Polish private sector this sort of very vibrant sort of emphasis on green investments as something that is not only going to be beneficial to society from the social front, but also something that's going to generate above average returns for investors, and that is going to lead to positives for both the private sector and the general public. Witnessing on the ground negotiations and witnessing on the ground exchange has sort of made me realize the importance of communication between the public and private sector. So I think, for example, for something like financing, you really need people from all of these sorts of sectors to come together and work on things, and that requires some sort of intermediation and people in the middle to facilitate that exchange. So I think coming to COP has really cemented my desire to work in these intermediary sort of roles and to help that sort of financing and whatever public-private initiative we're talking about happen. So I think that's something that I'm going to be very interested in and I'm going to do more research about.